we actually taste the wines. I usually like to give everyone a little bit of background as to why this is happening, because except for a short period during the 1920s and 30s, this whole quality revolution in Spain has happened in the last 20 years. And there's a few good reasons for it. Actually, there have been archaeological finds of vines dating back to about 4000 BC in Spain, so it's not like the vine is new over there. But there have been several things over history that have kind of held them back in the surge to quality. If you look back, kind of the first main point in the mid-1800s, when France was really leading the way, establishing regulations with the government and such, and kind of pushing techniques that other countries hadn't seen yet. Everyone was kind of following their lead. Spain joined that about then as well. And I kind of look at Spain's first real upsurge in quality is when Cava came into development, which is around 1875. Unfortunately, at this time was also the time that the phylloxera vine louse was devastating Europe. So this is an aphid that came over on the roots of American plants, basically wealthy French people importing exotic American plants. The American rootstock is resistant to it, the European is not. So in today's dollars, it would be billions of dollars lost, which is why over 80% of Europe's vineyards are grafted onto American rootstock to be resistant to this aphid that is now all over there too, because of what came from here. So that sets Spain back about 20 years. When you get into the 1920s and 30s, there were world-class wines coming out of Spain. There are 28 1934 Riojas you can taste today that are still in tremendous condition because they were making concentrated structured wines at that point. The unfortunate thing at that time was also when Spanish Civil War was breaking out. So many people fled Spain, which is why we also have a lot of good Tempranillo planted in Mendoza, Argentina. But the worst part of that era was the end of it when Francisco Franco assumed control of the country. And Franco's great idea was good grapes, bad grapes, doesn't matter. We will pay the same price to everyone for grapes, and we will create this homogeneous wine style for this zone, and this homogeneous wine style for here, and everything will be run by cooperatives, which basically guarantees you're going to get the lowest common denominator of quality across the board. If there's no reward for doing anything better, just make a lot of grapes, because that's how you're going to get paid. So I say that, yes, there were a handful of producers. Someone always brings up Vega Sicilia or something like this. Yes, there were producers that still make great wine, but about 0.01% of the production in Spain was doing that. Most of this was poor cooperative winemaking. So Franco died in 1975. There was even more chaos up until the mid-80s. So that was probably the worst time to be buying Spanish wine. But in 1986, Spain joined the European Union, and that's when everything started to turn around. Suddenly, the boundaries are down, there's international competition, there's reward for making fine wine, and there's also investment and ideas coming in from the outside, which is when this guy comes into play. Jorge Ordóñez's family had a food and wine distributor in Malaga, which is on the south coast of Spain. That's where Jorge grew up. He probably would have just expanded his family business because they were selling to top restaurants around Europe, except that he met a woman at University of Cordova that he ended up marrying who was from Boston. So he followed her over here, and instead of expanding the family business, he decided he would bring Spanish wine to the United States. This was in 1987 when no one could care less about Spanish wine over here. People barely even knew what a Rioja was, let alone wanted to hear about these 2-acre plots of 100-year-old Tempranillo that he had. So he realized pretty quickly that first he needed to learn how to speak English, because he didn't speak it when he first got over here. But second, he was going to have to show people value. You don't start people out in the country with $150 bottles of wine. So he started feverishly traveling back and forth to these backwater areas of Spain where he knew there was great material, just needed the right people running the project. And since then, Robert Parker's named him Wine Personality of the Year twice and called him one of the most influential wine people of the last 20 years, which he certainly is. He has pretty much single-handedly turned around the entire wine production, wine industry of Spain. There are other good importers of Spanish wine, but as anyone will tell you, this is the guy that blazed the trail for everyone at this point. So now everybody's getting their hands in it. There's construction over there like crazy. But I first came in contact with the wines over at Charlie